Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Mahasham, Rachahakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations, as always, to the elect. I want to get into a prophecy update, all right, dealing with World War III, all right, Armageddon, the war to end all. As you can see, NATO preparing for U.S. to quit the bloc, all right, as there is tension, all right, between, all right, nations that are a part of the beast system, all right, which have operated, you know, in support of, you know, America, which is Babylon the Great, all right, but in these latter days, all right, they're now, all right, in disagreements, all right, over various things, all right, and we always go into it, but let's first start here in the book of Revelation, the 8th chapter, in the 13th verse. It says, "And I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, having, all right, saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe," all right, and that is symbolic of the three world wars, all right, that are going to take place, all right, and the final, all right, is known as Armageddon in the Holy Scriptures, all right. So woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels which are yet to sound. So in the future, all right, it will be three woes. Now, when you get the book of Isaiah, the 9th chapter, and we'll, all right, as you can see here, is birth and reign of the Prince of Peace, all right. So when you get verse 5, just jumping to the point, it says, "For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise." See, with confused noise. All right, horses, all right, even elephants, all right, swords tingling, all right, warriors would go to war, all right, with pretty much hand-to-hand combat. So that's how wars were fought in the ancient time, all right. For every battle of the warrior is fought with confused noise and garments rolled in blood, okay. They would have their shield, all right, and their sword, see, and garments will be rolled in blood. But this, all right, this war that's coming will be with burning and fuel of fire, all right, burning and fuel of fire. I don't think I've ever read this in the NLT, but let's see what it says. "The boots of the warriors and the uniforms, all right, blood stains by war, will all be burned. They will all be fuel for the fire," all right. Then it goes, "For every battle of the warriors with confused noise, the garments rolled in blood, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire," meaning the war to come, okay? The war to come that's going to end all, you know, wars and bring about the kingdom of heaven, okay? It's going to be what? With burning and fuel of fire, all right? Because the Heavenly Father, let's get the book of Isaiah 54. All right, Isaiah 54 and 16. "Behold, I have created the smith," and the modern day smith, all right, which the smith created weaponry, all right, swords and whatever, all right. And we know that the first family, all right, in the Holy Scriptures, all right, you know, known to create weaponry was the family line of Cain. Okay, they were the first to create, you know, weaponry and, you know, make swords and weapons, all right. And now, all right, you know, the seed of Cain was, you know, swallowed up in the flood, but they've returned through the biblical Edomite, which was blessed with the sword, okay. The sword, and the modern day sword goes beyond the physical sword to poke, okay. It's now fulfilled in you know, military, all right, defense systems, bombs, nuclear bombs, drones, and many, many other things. Okay, so the Lord have created the smith that bloweth the coal in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. For I have created the waster to destroy. And the waster is ultimately those missiles that are going to be used to fight, all right, World War III. And these weapons were not created to just sit in museums and these nations to just practice, these war, tactics back and forth. No, they're going to use these various different weapons in war. All right, as the scriptures talks about how the arrows will be shot into the ends of the earth. All right, you think they're shooting literal arrows into the ends of the earth? No. All right, it's symbolic of these nuclear weapons. All right, as the scriptures talks about the iron bow. Okay, so as we see here, all right, another thing that we constantly see being talked about is war. All right, between NATO and Russia. All right, Israel's always in the mix. These things are all prophetic. All right, and we're living in a time where, as we always tell you, the Lord is going to break up the alliance of the beast system. And many of these NATO, all right, and EU countries will shoot missiles on Babylon the Great. So NATO is preparing for the U.S. to quit the bloc. The U.S. will leave NATO if Donald Trump is reelected this November. Several diplomats from the bloc's member states have warned. All right. And the fact that this is even a talking point is biblical prophecy. OK, whether Trump has something to do with it or not. All right. We know that this is all biblical prophecy. Say Europe's NATO countries are being urged to develop a strategy to deal with the consequence of such an eventuality and reconsider the bloc's defense capabilities, according to the report by The Telegraph. Okay. They're reporting the possibility of America's withdrawal is a concern. Okay. The European diplomat told the paper nobody knows what he's going to do next, and he's referring to Trump. See? The former president secured his leadership in Republican primaries earlier this week, and as he swept 14 out of 15 states to take on Super Tuesday and got 995 Republican convention delegate votes. His only opponent, Nikki Haley, dropped out of the race for the GOP nomination soon thereafter. He is now expected to face off against Biden in November, yada, yada, yada. All right. It says earlier, several former senior U.S. officials claimed, all right, that a Trump White House could make America withdraw from NATO. Former U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper made such a prediction in December of 2023. According to him, Trump could start pulling U.S. forces out of NATO countries, okay, potentially causing a collapse of the alliance. Reuters also reported on such a possibility at that time, okay, and we always go into this that pretty much there's going to be, all right, a breakup of the alliance. Okay, let's get the book of Obadiah. All right, and we'll just jump straight to the point in verse 7. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee, and they have prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread, that have taken on this dollar, which is the dominant, the dominant monetary of this whole beast system, right? They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee, and there is none understanding in him. All right. So they that have taken on this debt, they that have, pretty much aligned themselves with this system, all right, have laid a wound under thee, meaning they're prepared or preparing to destroy this bitch. And many of these EU and NATO countries, all right, especially the EU, have ties with Russia, you see, in some shape, form, or fashion. And sanctions being put on Russia by the United States, all right, is pretty much condemning EU or any NATO countries from doing business with Russia. All right. So who's the amongst many other things, this war in Ukraine, really Babylon is behind that. You see, but many things are happening that are going to lead to a division. Now, let's get the scripture in Mark, the 13th chapter, a kingdom divided. Mark 3:24. Okay, it says, and if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And if Satan rise up against himself and be divided, he cannot stand, but hath an end. All right, and the end is being manifest. Esau is the end of the world. Okay, so a kingdom can't be divided and pretty much make it. And we're at the time where this kingdom is definitely divided. Okay, let's see what this says in the NLT. If a kingdom be divided by civil war, a kingdom divided by civil war will collapse. And we have civil unrest and civil war on its way as well. All right, and as you see here, we also have this article. France and Poland don't speak for NATO, says Italy. All right, more division. See, biblical prophecy is speaking, as the scriptures say, at the end it shall speak and not lie. This is the importance of going into these prophecies, which by doing so, all right, we're uplifting the names of Yahweh. All right, he is, all right, Bahashem, and the name, all right, of Yahweh Shai. All right, he is the deliverer. All right, the Most High God Yahweh. All right, from the foundation of the earth, spoke this whole story into existence. All right, through his only begotten son. The testimony of Yahweh Shai is, all right, biblical prophecy. See, so these things being fulfilled, all right, only gives reassurance to the fact that the things that are written in this book are faithful and true. No other book, all right, to a T, all right, speaks of the times that we're in, all right, like the Holy Scriptures, okay? France and Poland don't speak for NATO, says Italy. All right, and we'll get back to the other article in just a minute, but sending NATO troops into Ukraine will block any diplomatic efforts to stop the conflict between Kyiv and Moscow, Rome has warned, okay? So again, they are not in agreement, all right, over the move, all right, which is leading to war, skirmishes, which ultimately that's a proxy war, all right, which really the United States is the main country behind it all. As always, the hammer of the earth. But as you can see here, many of the EU and NATO countries, all right, don't agree. France and Poland have no right to speak for all NATO members when it comes to deploying troops to Ukraine. Italian Defense Minister Guido, all right, told La Stampa newspaper in an interview published on Sunday, the move would only lead to escalation and damage diplomatic efforts to end the hostilities between Moscow and Kyiv. Now, ultimately, it's going to only get worse, all right? But again, for the purpose of prophecy being fulfilled, you're going to have particular, members of the beast system that want peace, all right? They don't agree, all right? And this is the beauty of going into this, to show you that biblical prophecy is real. The minister was commenting on recent statements by French President Emmanuel Macron and Polish Foreign Minister, all right, you can see his name there, I ain't fit to try to pronounce that, each of whom has entertained the possibility of sending NATO troops to aid Kyiv. All right, and what is Kyiv, so we can know? All right, we know it's dealing with Ukraine, but let's so the people watching can know. Okay, that's the city of Ukraine. All right, it's the capital city of Ukraine. Okay, and the capital city is what, where most of the policies come. All right, what is a capital? All right, Google will probably be better at answering, but a capital city or just capital, is the municipality holding primary status in a country, state, or province. Right, like Jerusalem is pretty much the capital, of the chosen land. All right, Nineveh was the capital of Assyria. So, when you see Kiev is speaking to Ukraine, but the major municipality where the laws go forth, but basically out of Ukraine. So it says, last week, French leaders said the West cannot exclude the possibility of NATO forces being deployed to Ukraine. Okay. His comments sparked a wave of denials from senior officials of member states, including the UK, Czech Republic, Finland, and Sweden, who insisted that they harbor no such plans. Okay? They trying to chill. Poland had initially said it would not send any troops to Ukraine. Okay? On Friday, this guy stated, Sikorsky stated that Russia's military operation in Ukraine requires, asymmetric, escalation on the part of the West. See? Basically is going to drain them, adding that the presence of NATO forces in Ukraine is not unthinkable. And that's just going to lead to war, man. You're just going to, have, NATO forces, in the front yard of Russia. Absolutely not. But that's ultimately what they're going to do because war has to happen. It says Macron has repeatedly stated that he stands by his remarks. This week, he said there are no limits to the West's options in supporting Kyiv. The West, America, has been, very keen on sending aid, military aid, and so forth, over to Ukraine. It says France and Poland can speak for themselves, but not on behalf of NATO. See, they don't agree, with, a lot of these, NATO and the EU countries, they don't agree with sending troops over there. Corsetto said about the developments, he also stated that making these arguments now makes no sense. Any potential NATO troop deployment in Ukraine means taking a step towards one-sided escalation that will block the path to diplomacy. And there's not going to be any diplomacy. Diplomacy is what? Meaning they chill. Let's look up the word. The profession, activity, or skill of managing international relations. Statesmanship, negotiations, talks. Well, it ain't going to lead to any talks that's going to lead to peace. Only war is only going to happen. And eventually they're all going to turn their sword on each other. According to Crosetto, Kyiv's Western backers should focus on diplomacy. Here it is. Y'all following Babylon. With this, war mentality when we need to get our economies back together. We need to do this. We need to do that. Y'all focusing on more war. This is only draining us. It's not even worth it. Since they are struggling to keep up with Russia's military production, capacity, Moscow is more equipped and agile than NATO. And this is a member of NATO saying this. When it comes to military production, the defense minister said, adding, the West has discovered that it has a much lower production capacity than Russia. There you go. And then Russia has all of these different countries, being aligned with them, formulating their own form of beast system. So he's letting you know that he's basically telling you that NATO is weak. And by these particular, countries, agreeing with Babylon's stance and talking about they're going to send troops over to Ukraine is only going to lead us further into, the destruction. We ain't ready for that type of war. That's basically what they're telling you. The minister noted that NATO has managed to slightly increase its ammunition production capacity in the year since it promised to supply Kyiv with 1 million
artillery rounds, but that still remains lower than Russia's capacity. Under these circumstances, the West must give all possible support to Kyiv, but consider helping it another way, Crosetto said, adding the Western nations should activate diplomatic channels, means stop, all right, being so, fixated on war. Try to figure out a way to stop, all right? So, let's see here. Yeah, Moscow and Moscow is saying basically we're ready, to talk and try to get this thing ended. All right. But every time we look up, the war continues, man. Okay. Let's see here. So boom, they're divided, and as we're gonna get, again, that speaks to what we're reading. Okay. Daniel 2:43. As whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men and make these different alliances, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. So you have particular stronger countries, all right, that are a part of this alliance. Okay, which the alliance of NATO was formed that basically any country that attacks any country within the alliance, all of us got to come to back. All right, and this thing that's going on in Ukraine is a farce. It's a sham. Okay, basically, it's Babylon the Great. All right, pretty much stirring things up with a proxy war that's going to lead all of these nations to, have to come to defend. But then, at the end of the day, just like when Trump was in office, all right, many of these NATO and EU countries, they're tired of Babylon. You see? So some of them want to follow Babylon, that bold fella. Some of them are like, stop, let's chill out. Let's read this in another, see what this says in another. Let's see what the NLT says. It says this mixture of iron and clay, all right, because the 10 toes are part half iron, half clay, half strong, partly weak. And of course, the strength of it is the military. But again, they're not going to agree with one another. All right. So a kingdom divided will not stand. This mixture of iron and clay also shows that these kingdoms will try to strengthen themselves by forming alliances with each other through intermarriage. And that's how a lot of these kingdoms, join with one another, all right, through marriages. That's an ancient custom. All right. And pretty much, America, overthrows governments, stabs, particular countries in the back, takes over, sets up puppet leaders, doing what they do. All right. But even that's not going to work because ultimately the Heavenly Father is in control. So they think that they're in control, but ultimately they're losing power, all right, day by day. But they will not hold together, just as iron and clay do not mix. Okay. So iron and clay do not mix. All right. Now let's go back to the article that we were reading before this one, but this only speaks to the whole overall, message, man. Okay. So pretty much there's talks of the United States leaving NATO. Okay. It says in mid-February, Trump's former security advisor John Bolton made a similar statement. NATO would be in real jeopardy, he said, adding that Trump would try to get out. A European diplomat said that the rest of the bloc should do the planning for a scenario in which Trump, all right, follows through on such plans or just weakens Americans' commitment to NATO. Because we remember when Trump was in office, he was calling on the beast system, NATO and the EU, to put more money into America. All right, because it was all about making America great again, right? It says preparations need to be in place, the paper's source added. Okay, another official described NATO as so over-dependent on the U.S., all right, a discussion on hedging
against risk of a U.S. withdrawal is necessary. This person added, a third source quoted the paper, all right, that said European nations should check the adequacy of their own defense planning amid such attacks. So basically, they should start looking out for themselves instead of relying on Babylon. Okay? Plan for themselves. In the UK, similar concerns were previously voiced by Lord Kim Darroch, a former British ambassador to the U.S. All right. She said, if I were an official in any prime minister's office around Europe, I would be commissioning the experts in government to start doing some contingency thinking about how a NATO without the United States would look and function. Just in case, he said in a piece he wrote, for Prospect last month. Trump himself has not made any comment lately about leaving the alliance. Instead, he said in February that he would not protect those NATO members that fall short of the 2% spending threshold in case of an attack, including Russia, meaning they would all have to put in. All right. It says, speaking at a campaign rally in South Carolina on February 10th, he recalled what he described as a conversation with the president of a big country in Europe when he allegedly asked whether he would rush to the nation's aid in case of an attack by Moscow. All right. Meaning, are you going to help Babylon? Like, can we depend on you to be there for us if there's a attack by, Russia on America? Trump said, which there's going to be an attack on Israel as well, which is going to lead to America getting involved. These are the things that are coming down the pipe. It says Trump said that if this nation haven't spent enough on defense, he would encourage Russia to do whatever the hell they want to it. All right. Moscow itself has repeatedly denied any plans to attack a NATO member, adding, all right, that starting a global war would go against common sense. But the Heavenly Father is bringing the war. Okay. And we know what this is all a part of. This is pretty much prophecy. All right. This is how the Lord is going to get victory. You see? He's going to allow them to have a brawl for it all, destroy one another, destroy Babylon, and then he's going to send his only begotten son back. That's why the scriptures talks about a great earthquake that's going to take place, all right, while we're getting beamed up. All right. Revelation 17 and 14. All right. These, speaking of, as a matter of fact, Revelation 17 and 12, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings which have yet to receive no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. All right. And that goes into the EU. All right. Starting with the Club of Rome, not the Club of Rome, the I forget the name of the alliance. All right. It dealt with Rome, but pretty much eventually forming what is known as the EU, NATO. Okay. And ultimately, these subordinate vassals, you have given their kingdom to the beast. All right. For the purpose of forwarding Babylon. These have one mind and shall give their power and strength to the beast. So these kingdoms have given their system, all right, their power over to the beast system, all right, but it's to aid and support Babylon's interest. Up until this point where now they're divided on how they want to move, on what moves they want to make for their own economies. And they're figuring out that America is in the way of a lot of progress that they want. And a lot of their economies are in disarray behind dealing with this whore, Babylon. It says, these shall make war with the Lamb. All of these countries are going to make war with the Lamb when he returns. And the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and Kings of kings. And they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. All right, the angels, man. And he said unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the whore sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. All right. And the whore is Babylon the Great, The waters are the people in which it rules over, and they're heaping all of the people into themselves, all right, via witchcraft in preparation to institute this charagma, which all of the other nations are joined to with them as well with the plan, but a lot of them don't agree on many things, which is causing friction. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. All right, these EU countries, all right, a lot of the NATO countries, they're going to hate the whore. But see, at one point, these horns, all right, operated in interest of the whore. But see, at some point, the 10 horns which thou sawest on the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God hath put it in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree to give their kingdom unto the beast, unto the words of the Most High God, Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai, all right, be fulfilled. And that's ultimately where we are now. He's put it in their hearts to fulfill his will and to give their kingdom to the beast for the purpose of Babylon being forwarded. All right, but now we're living at a time where they're no longer agreeing, all right, where the words of the Lord are being fulfilled. Now, let's see here. Let's go here and play this. Why NATO may have to stop a Russian invasion without the U.S. Let's go listen to some of this, get a few scriptures and close it out. I don't want to make this too long.
Europe has just 3 years to get ready for an attack by Russia on NATO and could end up losing a war to Vladimir Putin. That was the apocalyptic sounding warning from both Poland's Secretary of State and a respected German think tank in recent weeks. While the idea that the Kremlin is about to take on the world's most powerful military alliance, having just bungled its war in Ukraine, may sound far-fetched, there are compelling reasons to take it seriously. Ukraine is struggling on the battlefield because the Western weapons it was gifted proved less powerful than expected. The very same weapons that Europe will rely on to defend itself if Russia attacks. Meanwhile, Putin has just passed a new budget that will pour money into his army and has made no secret of his desire to reclaim the glory of the Russian Empire. It is even conceivable that Europe...
And see, that all fulfills prophecy with the Lord saying that he would put hooks into the jaws, all right, of Gog and Magog. Okay? Ezekiel 38:4, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horsemen and horses, all clothed with all sorts of armor, all right, even a great company with bucklers and shields, and all of them handling swords. The modern day sword is missiles, man. I will put hooks into thy jaws. The word hooks is chach, all right, chacha, all right, hook, ring, all right, ring in the nose of a captive, bracelet, okay, chawacha, all right, thicket, rook, fetter, all right, a ring in the nose. And you would do that to tame a wild animal, all right, or ultimately to pull it forth. Hook, ring in the jaw of a crocodile, all right. So this is a wild animal ready to bite, all right. Let's see here. Perhaps compare. See. Put through the wild animal are to be tamed. See, put through the, all right, perforated nostrils of an animal, all right, or of animals which are be tamed. Okay, so Russia will be in a very, very wild state in the latter days. And see, when you go to the Bible and prophecy, Revelation the 13th chapter, this beast system ends with a bear. Revelation 13:2, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, starting with the Greeks, and the feet of it were of the feet of a bear. That represents, all right, Russia, which is Gog and Magog, ending this thing. And when you go to this word bear, all right, arctos, a bear, And you go to the root word, archeo, all right, to be possessed of unfailing strength, to be strong, to suffice, to be enough, to defend, to ward off, all right? And what does the prophecy say in Ezekiel 38 about Russia? That they're going to be a guard to these different nations that are aligned with them in these latter days, all right? So the Lord is going to use, all right, Russia to ward off, to defend, all right, although eventually they're going to fall as well and end up trying to fight against Yahweh Shai. They're going to be used as a figurehead to lead many nations to come against Israel and the West. Point blank, period. See where we are.
Europe could have to defend itself without the help of the United States, the backbone of NATO. Donald Trump is no great friend of the alliance, and he looks increasingly likely to win back the White House next year. That would leave an emboldened Putin versus a weakened Europe. Could the continent survive? The alarm bells are...
An emboldened Putin, all right, versus a weakened Europe, which that's the prophecy that Europe would be weak. They would have the strength of the sword, but they would be what? They would have that miry clay, which represents disagreements, and a kingdom that don't agree, all right, are weakened. Okay? And they at each other's throats. They're going to go at war with one another.
Being sounded by Jacek Świera, the head of Poland's National Security Bureau, and scholars at the German Council on Foreign Relations. Here's why they're worried. First, both of them believe that Putin's ambitions for Europe go well beyond Ukraine and include more or less rebuilding Russia's old empire. Once upon a time, that included the likes of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, and Poland itself, all of which are now independent and, crucially, are part of NATO. And they have good reason for believing this. Before invading Ukraine in 2022, Putin demanded NATO withdraw its troops from all these countries, giving a clear indication of where he thinks the West's borders should end and Russia's borders should begin. Then, in June this year, he gave a speech at an exhibition dedicated to Peter the Great, the man who laid the foundations of Russia's empire, where he told his audience that their destiny is to return and to strengthen Russia's old territories. They warn this is clear evidence that Putin intends to attack NATO as soon as he feels Russia is ready for it. Second, they both argue Putin is getting ready for such a war and will launch it as soon as he has rebuilt his army from the losses it has suffered in Ukraine. The only point they disagree on...
Not only is he rebuilding his army, pursuant to Ezekiel 38, he's going to have these different nations, Iran, Ethiopia, Libya. All right, Turkey's going to switch. Okay, Germany, you know, they're pissed off at how America's handling Russia. It's messing their economy up. Okay? And what did it tell Russia? Ezekiel 38:7, be thou prepared, and prepare thyself, thou and thy company that are assembled with thee, and thou shalt be a guard unto them. See? What would that bear do? Ward off, protect. Okay? And it's going to be a major, all right, factor in, you know, this beast system ending and the kingdom being set up. The Lord is using them for a great work.
Is how long that will take him. The Germans think 6 to 9 years, but the Poles, who could well find themselves on the front line if Ukraine falls, believe it could happen in just 3 years. Just a few weeks ago, Putin officially signed Russia's state budget for 2024 into law, and it is thought to include a huge chunk of money for defense, around $115 billion. It's hard to overstate how significant that is. It means almost 40% of all government spending, more than Putin will spend on things like pensions and schools, will go on the military. It is even bigger in
See, because they're preparing for war. They ain't worried about agriculture, education. They're preparing for war because, again, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. Prophecy has to be fulfilled. See? And what is America doing? All right, sending money all over the world for these proxy wars. All right, pushing this gender ideology that's weakening their nation, and many other things.
GDP terms than notoriously high-spending America. As a result, the Germans believe Russia will be able to recruit and train around 280,000 troops per year. And Moscow claims it can build thousands of tanks in the same time frame, having churned out 2,100 in the last 12 months. That figure is thought to include just a few hundred new tanks and many more old models that have been refurbished, but is nonetheless impressive. It means Putin could recoup all of the losses he has suffered in Ukraine within Poland's 3-year estimate, assuming he can force Kiev into some kind of truce. But if he can drive those numbers up even further with his military spending spree, he may be able to rebuild his armies even without the need for peace. More reasons to believe Putin might attack NATO lie within the alliance itself. First, Ukraine's failed counteroffensive has called NATO's weaponry into question. Kiev and its allies bet they could win a quick victory because their gear was better than Russia's. That was not just their plan for Ukraine, but for Europe as a whole. For decades, leaders on the continent have been cutting the size of their militaries in the belief that they could do more with less, provided they had cutting-edge weapons. But, as Ukraine has shown, technology only counts for so much, a fact that is sure to make European leaders uneasy. Second, NATO could be heading towards a future where it loses its most important member, America. No country spends more on its military in dollar terms than the United States, and the reason the Europeans have felt so comfortable cutting their own armies is because they were on Team USA. But Washington's support for the continent...
And again, we can't forget Babylon is, the bulk of the sword, of this beast system, but it's all being weakened in many ways.
No longer appears guaranteed. Just last week, senators blocked a $100 billion defense package that included aid for Kiev amid a squabble over their southern border. This week, polls showed about half of voters think Biden is spending too much on the war, and more polls released over the last several months suggest Donald Trump stands a good chance of winning the election next year. He is no great friend of NATO, and if he regains power, he can cut aid to Ukraine entirely and perhaps even yank US troops out of Europe. That would both embolden Putin and gift him the time and space he needs to rearm. If the Russian despot then launches another invasion, Europe could be left to face him alone. Would the continent survive such an onslaught? It all depends on what European leaders do next. While the whole of Europe's eastern flank would be at risk from Putin, perhaps the biggest danger lies in the Baltics. These 3 countries, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, were long-standing parts of Russia's empire and are today sandwiched between Russia proper, its military exclave of Kaliningrad, and its close ally, Belarus.
See, and NATO was supposed to stop pushing this way, all right? But, trying to add, Ukraine to their, alliance, gives them a ally in the front yard of Russia. That's why that war is going on, a big part of it, all right? All with other, but ultimately the Lord just got them. Conflict is in the air. This is the Spirit of the Lord working in the earth.
They are connected to the rest of Europe by the narrow Suwalki Gap, and if Putin were to use his newly rebuilt tank army to close that gap, they would be cut off. Europe's armies would then need to break this blockade with a tank force of its own, at least as large as Russia's, if not larger, or else watch Putin's troops overrun the region. An infamous set of war games in 2014 found NATO would lose this fight, even with America's help. Winning without the US would be harder still. Poland, which borders the Suwalki Gap to the south, is alive to this danger and is already trying to build an army to thwart Putin's plans. In the last 2 years, it has bought almost 1,500 new tanks, 100 Apache helicopters, 500 HIMARS systems, hundreds more artillery pieces, and dozens of fighter jets. Warsaw also plans to double the number of soldiers at its disposal to 300,000. But with an economy and a population just a fraction the size of Russia's, it won't be able to fight and win that war alone. It will need the backing of its European allies, and none of them have shown such enthusiasm for ramping up their own armed forces. Olaf Scholz, leader of Germany, promised the Ukraine war would be a Zeitenwende, or turning point, for his country, as he handed 100 billion euros to the military to rearm.
And eventually that's all going to be broke up. All right, Germany is going to side with Russia. Watch.
2 years later, 2/3 of the money has been spent, a lot of it eaten up by inflation, without any serious changes to the size of the Bundeswehr. More money and changes have been promised, but the pace has been glacially slow. Britain has also disappointed. Despite being one of Ukraine's staunchest backers, it has not only failed to grow its own army, but actually plans to cut it from 76,000 troops to just 73,000, enough to fit inside Wembley Stadium with some spare seats. It wields just 200 tanks and will only add another 140 by 2030. By comparison, Russia can churn out 140 new tanks in just a few months. France has managed to allocate 400 billion euros to defense, but instead of funneling it into artillery guns and tanks, Emmanuel Macron plans to spend much of it on new nukes, cyber defenses, and overseas bases, leading to claims he is ignoring the lessons of Ukraine. All of which...
So all of these nations are starting to operate for their own merit. But again, they gave their kingdom to the beast until the words of the Lord were fulfilled up to this point where the alliances are just being broken.
Increases the odds of them losing a war to Putin within the next decade, with all the damage that would do to the West's credibility on the world stage. Despite all that, there is still hope. Europe has by far the larger economy, greater resources, better industry, and more people compared to Russia. In a fight which pitted the two sides against one another in total war, Europe would win, hands down. The problem is whether the Europeans will be ready to fight Putin if and when the time comes.
Right, and then you have to understand that Russia has all of these various different countries with them that are going to join as well. So, you know, that's a decent video. This is a good one too. You know, why, this was 12 days ago, why Russia can't rely on the United States to stop a Russian invasion, you know, which, you know, the Babylon is behind the majority of this madness. This is how Russia can attack NATO. I mean, you can look into more of it, but, you know, this all goes into Daniel, the 2nd chapter, you know, Rome. All right, in the revival of Rome, you know, where they would be divided. Okay. This is Daniel 2:40. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdue all things, and as iron breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. And that's what the Roman Empire did. All right. And whereas thou sawest the feet and the toes, all right, which is the revival of Rome. All right, the end of this image, okay, that was saw in his dream. Part of potter's clay and part iron, okay. The kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in the strength of the iron, the strength of the sword. For as much as iron for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. Okay, as the toes of the feet were part iron and part clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. All right, and you look up this word broken. Okay, thabayar or thabar, to break in pieces. All right, shabar, to break in pieces, to be broken, to shatter. All right, to break down. So they're not together, basically. Okay, they're all over the place. Okay, they don't agree economically. They don't agree in where they're gonna go with this war. They don't agree that, you know, some agree that money should be put, you know, to this Ukraine thing. Others are like it's a waste of time. Many facets to it, you know. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, making all of these agreements. But they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. So all of these alliances are getting ready to be broken. Okay, and in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. All right, it's never going to be destroyed. After 1,000 years, it won't be destroyed. It will be a forever kingdom, and it shall not be left to other people, the kingdom, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Okay, so this is ultimately what's coming. And the final kingdom, all right, is the revival of Rome, which we see that it's divided and they have many issues. So I'm gonna leave that there. I just wanted to tap into that. Of course, there's other videos. Okay, but it's a lot of propaganda in these things as well. So ultimately, we just stick to the prophecy, but we go into these things just to show you where we are. Hopefully, y'all edified on to the next. Shalom.